is not discussed largely in Germany yet, especially the government. They sold all of their Bitcoin, which is crazy when you think about it, especially at the price point that they did. So while a lot of nations are moving towards accepting Bitcoin or even mining Bitcoin or putting it into a national reserve, Germany is selling their Bitcoin.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Valentine Pleser to the podcast. Valentine is on the board of directors at Green Mining and a co-founder. Welcome to the Bitcoin Age, Valentine.
Thank you so much, Paula. I'm very happy to be spending some quality time with you.
It's wonderful to see you. So before we get to Bitcoin, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Cool. I am actually based in Berlin. I love Berlin. I came back to Berlin a couple of years ago, and it kind of matches also my Bitcoin journey, I would say. Berlin is a very tech-driven city, and it brings together a lot of people. And we actually have quite a big community of Bitcoiners, which is interesting. My own background is more around community building and education, learning, on the for-profit side, so not non-profit, but for-profit learning, leadership development. I actually kicked off my own career in marketing and then as a consultant, mostly focused on organizational development. And that's where I got some touch points with some banks and got to see pretty early on what I think is going well and not so well. But it was, of course, an exciting insight just to get to know the transformation of banks also, which is a complex process taking years. That was my biggest focus for a couple of years until I moved my consulting career more into also consulting some startups and more towards the management of companies and also focusing on vision and mission of respective companies. And that kind of matched the time of the first ICOs. So nothing to do with Bitcoin, but the whole crypto space was something that I was shocked to see how it developed, especially in 2018, since there was not so much regulation around it and people just sent their money somewhere and people received money for projects and didn't know how to spend it well. And I looked into that, and after that moved actually more onto the potential of tokenizing real world assets early on, and is respectively or more focused on energy as well. And that's kind of the first touch points that I got into mining before I actually went more into Bitcoin, because mining is has such an amazing opportunity to also decrease the risk for investors when you move into investing or getting more people on board for renewable energy. Yeah. And so that was actually the first touch point that was close to what I'm doing today. And I've worked for a couple of years also with my partner and co-founder Sasha. First invested into Bitcoin mining together with him. And from that, we then explored the potential of actually providing more people the opportunity to get to the source of Bitcoin, which is for us Bitcoin mining. And that's how we founded then Green Mining DAO, which is also a GM Data Centers. It's a Swiss-based AG, and we are building an ecosystem for retail and institutional investors to invest into renewable and profitable Bitcoin mining through co-owning the companies that own the data centers and receiving a dividend from the profits in Bitcoin. So it's a way of people to actually receive Bitcoin at the cost, at production cost, at the cost that it is being produced, and not have to depend on the market price that Bitcoin is sold at.
Wow. Well, that's very interesting. So you actually found Bitcoin mining before you went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole?
I did invest into Bitcoin mining before I actually bought Bitcoin, which is a funny way to go. I mean, it kind of happened simultaneously, but yes, I came more from the side of energy and really wanted to move my career more towards energy, and was very interested in the transformation towards more renewables, which has been a big topic actually in Germany for years and years. However, not enough people are investing into renewable energy yet. And I mean, now we have the result that Bitcoin mining is a greener energy than Germany is in terms of its renewables. So Bitcoin is greener than Germany.
Well, that's cool, and we'll explore that a little bit. But tell us a little bit more about your journey down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. What did you learn once you started studying Bitcoin?
What really drew me to Bitcoin was, I mean, I worked in areas where ego is a big thing, right? Who's the creator? Who's the person in power? Who's the one standing in front and saying, I'm the one that created this? And Bitcoin doesn't have that. There's a name that we have, and there's a paper that was written, and there's such an amazing system behind it that's been created for Bitcoin. But there's no one standing in front and saying, I'm the creator, I'm the amazing person, you should all, kneel in front of me. I really, really appreciate that side to it, because we don't know who the creator is, whether it was a group, whether it was a woman, where they came from. I think that's something where I said for the first time, wow, okay, that's so special, that's unique to the history of the world in a way. That was the beginning for me where it clicked. And now it's, of course, also one of my first arguments when I orange pill someone, although I'm trying not to be too intense around it. But if I talk about it, or if people talk to me about it and ask me questions, that's definitely the first thing that I would share to them. And I was at the Bitcoin Educators Academy a couple of weeks ago. I know that a couple of people that you talk to were on there or with me, or Dusan himself, I think talked to you as well. And there I really learned a few more things on how to educate people around Bitcoin that I found were very interesting, specifically around how Bitcoin can be understood through different stories of nature as well, like the beehive, and specific stories, or the interconnectedness of mushrooms in the forest that work with a certain algorithm, and not one mushroom will decide on, or can decide on, how the other mushrooms will grow. I love that there's so much we can explain in nature or through nature when it comes to Bitcoin. And then the mining process was something that I specifically learned more about through my co-founder, Sasha, who's been actually on a trailblazer for a long time and very focused on Bitcoin. I learned together with him through that process, which was exciting for me as well. And I think with Bitcoin, everyone's a different learner there. Some people love to watch videos. I love to listen to podcasts. And there's so many amazing ways that you can learn more about Bitcoin now. I'm very excited to share more about that and learn more, even more myself, because I feel like it's an ongoing journey. We can never learn enough about Bitcoin.
That's so true. When you were at the event, everybody there was into Bitcoin. One of my questions for you was about orange pilling people who are not into Bitcoin. So how do you approach that with people around you who are not into Bitcoin?
Usually I used to start with, did you know? Now I just share what I do and maybe a sentence why I think Bitcoin is valuable. And then usually people start asking me. And I think I'm by now so far in that bubble that I think that everyone must at least have heard about the movie Dirty Coin, or have seen it, or understood that Bitcoin is not per se bad for the environment. But I think that specifically around me, even though I'm very connected in like the space, entrepreneurial space, a lot of people don't know anything about Bitcoin apart from it being bad for the environment. Like I mean, if I would get $1 every time someone would say this to me, I would be a millionaire for sure.
And that's kind of funny, because that's exactly what draws you to Bitcoin. Because on your LinkedIn, you say that you want to secure a livable planet and sustainable profitability. Tell us how that ties into Bitcoin.
Okay, yeah. So a livable planet for me and for us and the company means that we value the resources that we have, which means also understanding that also the planet doesn't have infinite resources, but rather is limited, just like our time is limited and just like Bitcoin is limited. And we believe if more people have access to Bitcoin mining, understand the concept of scarcity as well, it will create a situation where people will make smarter decisions, or at least informed decisions about the resources around them, but also their own resources. And at the same time, I believe if we invest our money well, for example, in something like Bitcoin mining and renewable Bitcoin mining, then I think it's important for us that the money works for us and it's a productive asset, and profitability is key.
Yeah, everybody wants to make a profit for sure. What is renewable Bitcoin mining in Germany? What are the renewable sources that you find? And is it only in Germany?
So in Germany, actually our facilities are not in Germany, because in Germany we don't have, we have a mixed grid. So we have all different sources of energy coming together, and unfortunately, I think currently still less than 50% of the grid is renewable in Germany. So we actually go to places where we know that the energy that we secure for our data centers is 100% renewable in what we think renewable means, and for us that's just solar, hydro, and wind. We only consider these three for us renewable, and so far we are focusing on hydro because it's in terms of not creating any materials that need to be then recycled in a complex manner. I think that I personally love that about hydro. Water will flow and you don't have to create any trash for it. So it's also a cheap energy source. So we have our data centers actually in Paraguay, and we're expanding to a few more countries soon.
Wonderful. So with green mining involves investing in renewable energy, and you find investors to invest where your centers are. Is that correct?
It's slightly different. So what we do is we build a Swiss AG, so a company, or we incorporate a company in Switzerland. How it works for a Green Mining DAO is that we look for investors that are interested to invest in Bitcoin mining and in renewable Bitcoin mining. And with the first $500,000 that we get in for the project, we then look for the right energy contract and the land. And the next step is then to, through 3 funding rounds, bring in more investors and build out the entire data center. So people are actually invested into a Swiss AG and they own tokenized shares of a Swiss AG. And that Swiss AG then owns a data center or the mining hardware in countries like Paraguay. It creates a revenue through the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is then sold to, for a small portion is sold for energy, so that we can pay the operational cost and the energy, which in our case, for example, at the moment is around $46,000 per mined Bitcoin. And after that, we have the other part of Bitcoin that we don't sell, but we rather pay it out to all investors. And we ourselves, as Green Mining DAO, always maintain 20% of that company. And thereby, what we experience and what we think is the fair share is to say we keep the 20% and everyone is treated in the same way in accordance with their share. So we only win if everyone wins. And the other way around is the same thing. So we don't take a share of the profit if there is no profit, basically, but rather we want everyone to win just like we do.
Well, that sounds fair. I've heard mining is a cutthroat business. How do you overcome that?
Essentially, it's about getting cheap energy, definitely. So in Germany, it would not make sense to mine Bitcoin because we pay in Germany I think 37 cents per kilowatt hour, it's not possible. So it's always going to be looking for cheap energy sources, securing those energy sources, and then to mine Bitcoin in a very efficient way. And mining just gets more efficient. I believe it's actually that. It's the efficiency process, and we want to be as efficient as possible. We believe that efficiency is something that is good. There should be no waste in energy or in any other resources. So we build our companies also as efficient as possible to make sure that the profit is high at the end and we can actually distribute as much Bitcoin as possible. And we have some other ways to also make it more profitable. And it's not only, or more efficient actually, it's not only that we use or go to cheap energy sources and we build all of our processes very sustainably and also efficient, but we also have alternative inflows by reusing the heat. So we always look for innovative ways to make the mining process more efficient and to make use of all of the resources that we have. And in Bitcoin mining, a resource that a lot of people don't see at first what kind of resources it is the heat that comes out of the miners. And we filter this heat, and every container basically has its own drying oven. And we use that drying oven to, for example, dry mangoes in Paraguay, because there's an abundance of mangoes in mango season. There's actually almost every family owns a couple of mango trees, because a mango tree brings a lot of shade. And the shade is good in a country that is very hot. However, there's so many mango trees that people actually can't even eat all of the mangoes that are there. So what we do is we work with local partners and local communities that then pick up the mangroves so that they don't get bad, but rather before that we save them and we wash them and they are cut and then they are dried in our drying ovens, and we then therefore have an entirely new product, which is Bitcoin Mango. I also have some here to show you what it looks like. It's actually a great adoption product as well. So every pack of mangoes has a Bitcoin hard fact just to educate further, and people that buy it, they often also give it to someone else as a present, and then that person learns a bit more about Bitcoin. We have all of the hard facts listed here, so it's of course 21 hard facts about Bitcoin, and it's always 1 out of 21. And we explain a bit of the product in the back here. And this is actually co-founder Sasha with a mango in his hand. Yeah, so actually Bitcoin mango season is coming up soon. I just spent the weekend at a builder's weekend, and they, for example, bought the mangoes to then put them into the gift bags, which I think is amazing because, it brings a certain tangibility to something that's very complex. And I see a lot of people appreciating that.
That's a wonderful idea. Really wonderful business idea.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about the difficulty adjustment in Bitcoin mining and why it's important.
So the difficulty adjustment ensures that we don't mine more Bitcoins quicker, especially since, you mentioned before, Bitcoin mining per se can be very competitive. And yes, of course, if the Bitcoin price goes up, it actually brings more profitability opportunity to more miners around the globe. So everyone that might have had a higher price of energy or paid or bought their equipment in a high price time or period, they go back online because they reach profitability more or quicker again. So for them, it's worth it to get back into the network. But then if everyone goes back into the network at the same time, could change potentially the process. So it needs to be adjusted, and difficulty is then adjusted so that it becomes slightly harder for everyone and we still remain at the same rate.
Well, thank you. I know that's a more technical sign, and just wanted to hear a little bit about it. So I also read that you wrote, "Change is inevitable, but transformation is by conscious choice." Tell us about that.
So I came from the change management side of business and was supporting change for a long time. And I believe there is a certain element of being conscious around change. So change happens all the time. Around us, we can't really stop any change. It doesn't help us to resist it. But if we just let it happen, it's not a conscious choice. But there is an opportunity for us to make a conscious choice. If we want it, then we can turn that one into a transformation, and that is a conscious transformation. So I believe it's around ownership of our own level of consciousness, of our own experience on this planet.
So when you say ownership, are you talking self-sovereignty like we have with Bitcoin?
Yes, exactly. Voting with our dollars, voting with our Bitcoin, making choices of where we can make our own decisions and not be sovereign by someone else, especially through our own resources that we work through or worked for.
And do you think people in Germany, a lot of your friends and acquaintances, do you see that Germany is quite a successful country? It's doing well. People generally earn a good living. Do you think that's one of the reasons people don't see the need for Bitcoin?
I do think there is an element of truth with it. It is interesting, though, to look at where a lot of the nodes are. And I think Germany ranks as one of the top countries when it comes to nodes. However, I do see an element of, in a busy capitalistic environment.
And like you said, I think it is higher than I would expect.
Mm-hmm.
I just see that sometimes first world countries and people doing quite well, and I always think Germans are doing quite well. They're very hardworking, studious, follow the rules. I know it's a generalization, but yeah, I'm just impressed that there are a lot of nodes. I think that's a good point. That maybe is inflation high in Germany?
Not high compared to Argentina. It is, but I think it's very similar to other countries or Western countries, I would say.
Yeah, I read it's only around 2.2%, which isn't high.
No.
But so what do you think it is that would attract German people and Europeans to Bitcoin?
So one of the reasons why I think Germans have not been so open to Bitcoin yet is the negative perception in the news and media outlets. Definitely that plays a large role. It's important in Germany, I believe, to maintain a white vest, as we say in German, so that the things that we do within certain positive frames, and I think that also is directed at investments, will fall back negatively if you find out that a politician invests into something that might not have a positive effect, for example. Bitcoin is not discussed largely in Germany yet, and especially the government. They sold all of their Bitcoin, which is crazy when you think about it, especially at the price point that they did. So while a lot of nations are moving towards accepting Bitcoin or even mining Bitcoin or putting it into a national reserve, Germany is selling their Bitcoin. And I think another element is also in Germany, we have a very large rate of employment in terms of people are employed rather than being independent workers or self-employed or being entrepreneurs. Germany doesn't really support entrepreneurial behavior, and actually the opposite. It's not something positive where you don't get any benefit really from being an entrepreneur in Germany. And I think that is a thinking that might be also related there for some of the reasons why people are not that open for Bitcoin yet, because being employed often is also following certain rules. You are in the hamster wheel. It doesn't have to be negative, but it just doesn't open that much for new opportunities or for thinking of sovereignty, etc. So I believe those are some of the reasons why people around me are not yet so much into Bitcoin in Germany. But I think slowly I see I think next year is going to be a year of change for that. There are a lot of people in Bitcoin already in Germany. And the community is not small. And I mean, Germany, in fact, has a very large amount of nodes or people having nodes. So I think that community exists. Now it's a bit more about getting that community together and adoption rates going up. Talking more about it in German content being created, all of that I think will play a role. Because even if you have podcasters and people wanting to educate around Bitcoin, I see a lot of those also creating content in English, not so much in German actually. That's also an interesting fact, I believe.
Yeah, that is very interesting. You made some really good points there. Why do you think in 2025 it's going to go up? Do you think it has something to do with the price?
I do think so, yes. I see it right now already. I mean, we have one of the biggest outlets, or the biggest outlet for German readers on Bitcoin news is the BTC Echo. You can just simply see how many more visits they get and how much more people are Googling BTC Echo or the news on there. So just looking at that, I do see more interest flowing into reporting on Bitcoin, and I now am receiving more asks for interviews or people inviting me to speak somewhere. I mean, it's like a little bit of a, as it always is, it's a curve, right? There was a time in 2021 and 2022 when there were a lot of events around Bitcoin, and then last year I would say there was not so much. This year also a little bit less, and I think next year is just going to be bullish again, also in terms of events. And then us, of course, entering the German market, which we haven't done so far. We are not addressing Germans directly for our product, or because it's a financial product, and that's going to change in the next year or anywhere in the next few weeks. So that's exciting. So I can then report a lot more on the German market and Bitcoin for sure.
Wonderful. Well, we'll talk in another year and see how it's going.
Yeah.
I heard on a podcast you mentioned you got your mom into Bitcoin mining. How did you do that?
Actually, my mom's very entrepreneurial in her thinking. She's always been. She has a background in being a movie producer, and she now moved into real estate and is a great agent. So she's always been looking for opportunities to earn passive income, and it was fun to see her so excited about this project and start investing into it as well. So my mother is actually one of our investors and great fun for sure, bringing in also some new leads and informing people about our project and about Bitcoin per se, which I think is very exciting.
Wonderful. Do you think people who invest in your company need to understand Bitcoin, or do they just need to make a return?
We have space for everyone. I would say that most, if not 90% of the people that are currently investors have owned Bitcoin before. Definitely. Understanding Bitcoin is, I'm wondering where do we put that start of when to understand Bitcoin and when it's hard to say, right? I feel like actually the people that are invested right now, most of them are deep down the rabbit hole and they understand Bitcoin for sure, or they've bought Bitcoin. And then we definitely have investors that join the space through us. So they actually, this is their way in to understand the process more, and they have some touch, or they have had some touch points with Bitcoin maybe before, but they understand through our process of renewable Bitcoin mining, they understand Bitcoin a little bit more, and they actually want to join because they want to be part of that transformation or that innovative project of making all of this renewable. So that's one of the core entry points as well.
And how has Bitcoin changed you?
I would say definitely in my own spending. As we say, you can spot a Bitcoiner by being also a bit more sustainable in their own resource allocation, on thinking, do I really need this, or do I rather buy Bitcoin from it? So definitely, I would say my own investment decision making and my own resource management has been influenced by Bitcoin. And at the same time, I think if I think about the way I think and the way I speak, I think I talk more about topics that are a bit more deep in terms of understanding how we make choices and understanding sovereignty and understanding what it means to take ownership over our own lives. I believe that's definitely something that I think I'm talking more about. So it's more about my own character as well. Yeah.
Do you think there's a spiritual side to Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is something that we believe in. So I do believe that is spiritual per se. I think so, yes. I think believing into something has a spiritual side to it, definitely. That's an interesting thought. Yes, believing is spiritual. What about you? Do you think Bitcoin has a spiritual side?
I do. And I ask most of my guests this, and even the men say yes. And I suppose it's like you said, it gives us some guidelines, like being self-responsible, being self-sovereign, and having a low time preference, like you mentioned. And these are different ideas to some of us, and make us think more about our time also. Am I spending my time doing things I love, or am I just getting paid to do something I don't enjoy? And so,
Oh yeah, I love that.
yeah.
Are we mining Bitcoin or are we mining fiat?
Exactly. So is this company and what you're doing your purpose and passion? Have you found that?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's how we notice sometimes that something is our passion is that we love doing it also on a Sunday, right? And we love spending time with it on a Sunday and it doesn't feel like work. I'm not saying that it doesn't feel like work, because definitely efficiency is intense. Yeah, it's very important for us to use our resources in the most efficient way. And that means high focus, actually, being very aware of what we're doing in every moment and what we're prioritizing at work as well. And that's definitely something that I'm sharing and that I would say the entire team is focused on. We really want to move towards spending our time well, and then also making room, of course, for other things in our lives. But I really love the passion that our team is bringing to this project and living through it.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure.
And tell us where people can find you and your company.
Yes, of course. So Green Mining DAO is the website. So www.greenminingdao, all spelled together, and then .io. I'm sure if you type Green Mining DAO in like this, you'll find us pretty quickly, because we rank very well, actually. And then happy to connect also through LinkedIn, or I think you're going to share this on Twitter. So I'm also going to be moving into X a bit more. It's not my number one platform, but I think it's something that I will definitely answer a message if you send me one there.
I looked for you on X and I couldn't find you there. So maybe you'll send me your link and I will post it below. Just tell us, why do you choose LinkedIn?
Actually, I think it's just, I like the UX of LinkedIn. I've been using it for many years. I have my entire network, my business network is on LinkedIn. I have by now, I think, 12,000 connections. It feels like there's a trade-off for me personally to move to another platform. So it's just more about what is the first thing that I pull up. If I pull up social media, it's definitely LinkedIn for me, because I feel like I learn a lot on there as well. And right now I'm also exploring lots of new Bitcoin content on LinkedIn. I mean, honestly, every single post, I think, where it used to be educational and leadership development, every single post was something about self-reflection and what it means to be a leader. And now it's like gotten kind of a mix, but I think definitely a lot more on Bitcoin content. And I'm really enjoying that because I feel like there's so much creativity flowing into that as well.
Well, I was surprised how much Bitcoin content I saw on LinkedIn. I think whereas X is the very latest news, LinkedIn has a little bit more in depth. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Paula. It was a pleasure.